Today is Tuesday. It is Chai Bar Cheshvan Tovshin Ayin Dalet. We're in the Mamar Vayikach Havaye Elokim es Adam Shabbos Parshas Bereishis Mevorchim HaChodesh Mar Cheshvan Tovshin Yud Beis, and we are on page Kuf Nun Zayin. And we are, where are we up to?
Vihine.
We're up to Gimel.
That's all you got to do. I wasn't. No, we're close to it.
No, we didn't finish. I don't think we finished the previous paragraph.
Okay, fair enough. You've been following? You've been following it? So it's maybe downtown Abbey hasn't got anything on this. Huh? I heard that already this morning.
I think we're up to Ule Idach, which is 7 lines from the end of the big paragraph on Kuf Nun Zayin. 7 lines before Gimel. The line actually starts by Ule Idach. Yeah. To recap, the Rebbe's question was on the Pasuk in Parshas Bereishis. Good morning, Eddie. Hashem says, the Torah says, that Hashem took man and he placed him in Gan Eden, in the Garden of Eden, the Avda U'Lishamra, to work at the Gan Eden and to keep, to guard the Gan Eden. The spiritual connotation meaning, La'avda, to add godliness into Gan Eden, U'Lishamra, to keep out anything negative, anything spiritually negative from Gan Eden. So the Rebbe asked, what is the idea of keeping out negative aspects from Gan Eden when Gan Eden is a place that doesn't tolerate anything negative? It's all good. Can't tolerate anything negative. So what's the Shamra? How does the Shamra fit in? To understand that, the Rebbe prefaced the concepts of Olam, Shana, and Nefesh. World, year, and soul, which are 3 concepts brought in Sefer Yetzirah. Actually, it's mentioned a number of times in Sefer Yetzirah. And the Rebbe said these 3 concepts are the foundation stones of the entire Seder Shtalshelus chain order of creation. Olam meaning space, Shana meaning time, and Nefesh meaning life. The Rebbe began to explain first Olam. Olam being an allusion with an A, alluding to the lowest aspect of creation. Nefesh is a reference to the highest aspect of creation, of existence rather. And Shana being the connector between the two. Olam being existence in its most defined state. Nefesh being the energy in its most undefined state, meaning to say that it's such a state of energy, of life-giving, of light, that it is even beyond life-giving. Life comes from it, but it's beyond that. And therefore, there needs to be something that connects the two, and that is the function of Shana, of Zman. So we're now in the middle of discussing the idea of
what do
Shana.
you mean by defined?
The way that Rebbe explains it here, he's talking about something that is defined by Vav Ktsovis, by the 6 edges, the 6 surfaces. So for example, Guf, Gashmias, the lowest form of existence in its most defined state.
The physicality.
Yeah. Earlier on, he defines it as Vav Ktsovis. Later on, the 6 surfaces. Later on, he defines it as Guf. Right? In a certain, when he discusses the Vav Ktsovis, the 6 surfaces, he also defines the spiritual. In spirituality, you also have a level of spirituality or of energy that is apprehended by the Gashmi. So in a certain sense, that's also within the confines of what would be described as Olam. Right? But if you want to look at it as a catch-all, if you want to sum up, Olam means existence in its most defined state. If you imagine, say, the Shtashel is going from the highest level to the lowest level, you're talking about the lowest level. Let me give you an example from how the Kabbalah looks at Olam Shana Nefesh, also mentioned in Chassidus, which will give you a bit of maybe in this sense, a bit of an easier, even though it's more esoteric, it might give a little easier way to grab onto it. In the letters of Shem Havaye, you have Olam Shana Nefesh as well. But in the reverse order. Nefesh. In other words, when we talk Olam Shana Nefesh, we go Bilmata Lamayla, from below to above, from the lowest to the highest. In the Oisius of Shem Havaye, Yud Kei Vav Kei, Yud, Vav, and Hey. Yud would be Nekuda, Vav is Kav, Hey is Shetach. Yud is a point, Vav is a Kav, a line, and the Hey is a Shetach, is the expansion, which is Olam Shana and Nefesh. In the reverse order, it's actually Nefesh would be the Yud, Vav would be the Shana, the connector between taking the Yud and drawing it down, and the Hey is Shetach, which is Olam, and right? So Hey, don't ask me what happens to the other Hey, we'll leave that for the moment, but that's actually the
What happens to the other Hay?
Other hay is actually, the other hay is actually between the Yud and the Vav, in its first manifestation.
No comment.
So therefore, the time is like the media, like
Correct.
water in
That-
which the two operate.
Correct. It makes the connection between that which is beyond to that which is below, which would be they would be inherently, without a connector, they would be separate. So, in other words, you need all three in order for Seder Shtashlos to function. It's not that you have these three distinct. If you start dissecting them, you have these three distinct elements, right, or categories, or brackets, if you will, right, or as he calls them, the foundation blocks. You say it called Seder Shtashlos. That's how Seder Shtashlos operates. In order for Seder Shtashlos to operate, you need the lowest to be fused, to be connected to the highest via the intermediary. In every place, in every domain, in every realm. That's Olam Shana Nefesh, right? So first he described Olam, which is the lowest. Then he said Nefesh, which is the Nekuda, the point from where things begin to emanate, but is beyond. It's much greater. That's one of the phrases we mentioned in the Shiur, in previous Shiurim, is a lashon in Chassidus, which is brought, Lo yizehu inyan ha'elokus shemimenu mishavim elamis, something along those lines. You can't say that the inyan of godliness, what does godliness consist of? Godliness is something from which worlds are created. In fact, it's true that worlds are created by godliness, but you can't say that that's what godliness is, because godliness is a lot greater than that. So nefesh, in a sense, is that energy which is totally beyond everything. So how do you get from that to, as it were, grabbing hold of the aspect that actually gives life? For that you need shana.
Just as a side, how come the word nefesh is used here? When we had something the other day, nefesh, chai, yechid,
Because in fact, nefesh is the lowest. Your question is because it's the lowest form of.
Is it used in the colloquial sense, or is it used specifically because we're that's what I'm trying to say.
A Jewish nefesh.
Is it just like a colloquial term? This is another way of using nefesh, or is it
Without
using nefesh specifically as the lowest of those five levels?
without going into, without reading up on it further, my initial response would be that it's colloquial.
Colloquial, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm not sure if in Sefer Yetzirah goes into nefesh, ruch, neshama, chai, yechida. Nefesh is mentioned many times in Sefer Yetzirah. I mean, it's not very long Sefer Yetzirah, and it's written very cryptically. You know, it's like short statements and they're like riddles. But nefesh is mentioned again and again. I don't remember if he mentions, but nefesh is, in this sense, is a catch-all. Colloquial, as you say. So now let's go back to Zman, to Shana. So he said, what is the function of Shana? The function of Shana is to take that which is completely beyond and to connect it to the lowest form of existence. Life. A life-giving force. And the Rebbe began to explain that a life-giving force, as we know it, operates in a way that which it comes into contact with, that which it gives life to, itself becomes alive. So when we talk about, for example, the soul and the body actually becomes alive. It's not that the soul is a living thing, and now it is within the body, and it forces its way through the body. It turns the body into a living thing. If you want to know the difference between the former and the latter, take, for example, a robot. A robot is not alive. You figure out a way how to make it move and how to make it. A robot is not a good example because, well, it is a good example because a robot functions, I guess, through electricity, right? The electricity doesn't cause it to become alive. It causes it to make certain movements, right? But the component parts are all dead. A living creature is alive. It's the physical shell of that creature is alive, is physically alive. When the soul departs, it becomes dead, right? I guess.
Alive or exists?
It's alive. Chai. It's alive.
You can say the same about breath. When breath leaves the physical body, it dies.
No, but it works the other way around. Yes. When you die, then the breath leaves the physical body.
Which goes first? The breath. It
Chicken.
doesn't matter.
The chicken.
It's the separation. When there's no breath, it's dead.
Correct. But the point being that the connection between the life-giving force and that which it causes to live is such that they fuse as one. That's the point. And because of that, we need to have shana. You need to have that connector. In other words, I guess in a certain sense, nefesh has the ability to force things to become animated, if you will, right? But in order for something to become alive, in the sense as we know it, meaning to say that it becomes one, it needs to fuse. You need that chibur, and for that you need shana. And he explains like this. We learned about this, as I mentioned before, in a previous Maimer in Tov Yud Aleph. I'm going to elaborate now.
I'm going to ask you one thing. When you say alive, do you mean exist?
No.
When the soul leaves the body,
first of all, the body still exists.
so it exists.
And the
it's
soul,
not alive.
and the soul still exists.
Because if they were both alive, even if the soul wasn't part of the body
When the soul leaves the body still exists because there are two components to the soul.
And the nefesh stays with the body.
Sorry? The nefesh stays a little bit in the body, and the decay of the body is such that it goes along with that aspect of the soul that allows it to continue to exist. As it departs, more and more, gradually departs, the body gradually decays. Right? You know what? Let's not go into that fine separation between the two components of the soul, the component of the soul that gives the body life, animation, and so on and so forth, and the soul part of the soul that gives the body existence. Let's look at them both as one for the purpose of this discussion. Okay? So, good morning, Avram. If you don't mind, you can inform me a little bit now because I'm gonna leave before the opening. I may be able to come back before you finish, but I would like to say l'chaim with you before I go. So, the Rebbe says like this: for the life-giving energy to, on the one hand, be able to give life to the extent we just explained, that the body itself becomes alive, and on the other hand, so in other words, to give it life, on the other hand, to fuse with the body to such an extent that it becomes so synonymous and one with the body that the body itself becomes alive, you need two opposing factors. It needs to exist in a state of paradox. On the one hand, it needs to be connected to its source, because if it becomes disconnected from its source, it no longer can give life, because then it'll become, I guess, almost like the body itself. On the other hand, in order to fuse with the body, it has to be separate from its source. So how does that work? If it would remain connected to its source, it would be in a state of nefesh, which means it would be totally beyond connection to the body. If it would be disconnected from the source, it can't give life, because it loses its potency. It loses its consistency, if you will. Right? It loses its energy. So what happens? It needs to be connected and disconnected. That is called, in the terminology of Chassidus, rotzu v'shoiv. So it's dveikus. It's connected to its source. But as we learned in the previous Maimer, in Tavshin Yud Aleph, I think it was Zeis Pasha. Which Maimer was it? It was in the Maimer of Pashas Poram, Vorchem HaChedesh Nissen. Zeis Chukas, where we learned about rotzu v'shoiv, right? So on the one hand, its source says to it, go and give life to the body. So it sends it away. And as we know, there's tzimtzum. Part of the function of the tzimtzum is, what does it do? It causes the oil to be disconnected, as it were, from the oil sof, because there's tzimtzum. It becomes bebchinas dveikus, she'eina nikeres, so to speak. Right? It's connected, but it's undiscernible. It's indiscernible. It's unnoticeable. Right? Or to use the terminology that he says over here, that he uses here, dveikus is bebchinas ischatshus. Its connection to its source now is in a mode of renewal. It's like almost like a reconnection, as it were. This is the process of rotzu v'shoiv. Rotzu is the sending down of the oil to go down, leave, lech lecha, if you will, leave. Go down below. Then when it comes down below, it says, what am I doing here? I've got to go back. This is an unnatural place for me. So it comes back. Then it comes back, but it feels that the whole purpose why Hashem emanated this oil, why this chayas was emanated from its source, was in order to give life to something below. So it, again, goes back below. Comes back below, it feels like it's in an alien environment. Goes back up. So this is the rotzu v'shoiv process that is recurrent and constant. That is the source of breath. That is the source of the heartbeat. That is the source of time. That's why it's called Shana.
I wonder if tides are not a good example of this. The tides of the sea, which are connected with the moon. And you see the tides run
Goes in?
the Shiur.
Yeah, probably yes.
And there you see a connection, a nice connection with the moon. It's the moon that's doing it.
Correct. This chachas of the moon. In fact, the sun also. The sun rises, the sun sets. Right? Etc. Etc. So let's go inside. So on the one hand, if it would remain dovuk in its makir, if it remain connected constantly to its source, it would not be able to give life to the body, would not be able to fuse with the body. That unity, that fusion with the body would not be able to take place, because it would be in a state of etzem, still in a state of essence, and it would be too overwhelming for the body to handle, and it would not be able to fuse. So what's the remedy to that? The remedy to that is detach it from its source. It shouldn't be of the essence, it's an emanation from the source. What happens then? Ule idach. I think it's 7 or 8 lines from the end of the paragraph. Lidach, the first word. On the other hand, ulidach gis on the other hand. It still must be also connected to its source. Why? Because if it would be disconnected from its source, it would be the other extreme. It wouldn't be any life-giving energy at all. Why? Because this power of the soul to give such life to the body, that the body itself should become alive, we're not talking about forcing its way through the body. In other words, finding expression despite the body. No, we're talking about fusing with the body to the extent that the body itself becomes alive. It is, why does it fuse with the body in such a way that it makes the body itself alive? Because the soul is something which is essentially alive. That's what it is. That's why the soul, when it comes into contact with something, it makes the other thing alive as well. Atzmei chai. It is such a life. It's such a life-giving energy that whatever it comes in contact with, it causes that to be alive as well. Umizem move on. So from this it's understood, and it's because of that it makes when it comes into contact alive itself. So it's understood that the emanation of this energy, of this life, to make the body itself alive, it must remain connected to that aspect of the soul which is itself essentially alive. It's only because of that. It's only because it has the characteristic of what? Of being something so alive that whatever comes into contact with it causes that to be alive as well. Not that it finds expression through everything. It causes everything that it comes into contact with to be alive. So when it comes into contact with the body, it causes the body to be alive. Where does that aspect come from? From the fact that it's connected to the etzem, to the essence of the life-giving energy. So you have this paradox. On the one hand, in order to give life to the body, it has to be a ha'ora, an emanation, because if it would remain in its state of essence, it would be too overbearing for the body to handle. It would not be able to fuse with the body. So therefore you need to have a ha'ara, an emanation. But if it becomes an emanation, you run the risk of its losing its potency, its quality, its essential quality. So how do you get something which has an essential quality, but is not the essence? So it has to remain dovuk. It has to remain connected. But if it's connected, it would seem that it would still be in a state of essence, which would be overbearing. So what do we do? So it remains dovuk, it remains connected to its source, but its connection to its source, its cleaving to its source, is not mamish cleaving. What does that mean? It's in a mode of renewal. In other words, it means it's in a mode of rotzu v'shoiv. It departs from the body, going back to the source and saying, I want to be connected to my source. On the other hand, when it comes back, the source says, go and give life. And this process is constant. The to and the fro, the back and the forth, is constant. And that way you have a ha'ora, which is tailor-made to fuse with the body and to fuse with the body and to be within the confines of what the body can tolerate. On the other hand, you still have something which is connected to its source and therefore doesn't lose its ability to actually make the body itself alive as well. And from here, the Rebbe is going to take these three concepts of Elam, Shana, and Nefesh, and he's going to define them in Avodas Adam. What does that mean? How do we apply those three concepts? Where do we find those three concepts in our service of Hashem? That's what we're going to learn further on.
Is this right? Sure. Is it both happening at the same time?
No. Obviously not, because let's put it this way. It's happening constantly.
Well, I don't understand what constantly means. I mean, I said 10 minutes, a fraction of a
Well,
second.
I don't know how you can.
Or the other point is that they're both happening at the same time.
Let's put it this way. I guess it depends at which level you're talking. Okay.
So,
When you're saying happening at the same time, you have to understand what you're saying. What does at the same time mean?
Well, the time
How do you-
the medium within which all this holds?
How do you define at the same? How do you define at the same? So in our consciousness, in our state of existence, so you can measure it in hours, in minutes, in seconds, in milliseconds, right? So, but you'll still have some measurement. Even when we come to the point where we can't measure anymore, that's still not at the same time. It's at the same time only relative to the fact that we can't measure.
I understand.
So now when you're talking Lamaila, for example, Rotzav Hashoiv, right? Time, spiritual time, is of a different order.
So I'm talking about time being the same, Shana being Shinoi, which is change.
Well, obviously it's not at the same time. That's the point.
Yeah.
Because that's what causes those divisions. Right? Breishis Bara Elokim, in the beginning. This goes into a whole discussion. What is time? There's Ischalkus Azman, then there's Man, there's what's called infinite time, or there's essential time, right? If you have time, I'll send you an article by Tzvi Freeman.
I'll send you a
where
website. Very interesting thing about time. Fantastic.
But this is the idea of Rotzav Hashem. yes, I guess it's like Zocher v'Shomer. Shomer v'Zocher b'dibur echad.
Yeah, same thing.
Toch gedei dibur.
That's not b'dibur echad. That's Toch Kedei Dibur.